are you trying to work an argument that you're diminishing the fine art potential within someone working in that industry? Well, you know, in fashion, it's changed over the years. You know, we had 100 years of Vogue magazine at the National Portrait Gallery. We've had Tim Walker at Somerset House. We've had, you know, it's celebrated, and the fine art values of that medium are celebrated now, where, you know, 50 years ago they weren't so much.
What impact does a photographer's commercial work have on their fine art photography career? This is Rahul from Artist Life Hacks and V Patina. I speak to Sebastian Ripson, a curator at Gallery WM in Amsterdam, and Steve Smith, the lecturer in photography at Nescol Aberdeen, to find out.
I've got a question for both of you. At its essence, the question is, you know, photographers, you do portraiture, there's product placement, there's fashion. There's a broad remit of things that photographers do. Mm-hmm. And my question is, how does that feed into fine art? Does it make it harder or more difficult? And the reason I'm asking that question is that, you know, and there's also photojournalism and things like that, right? But the reason I'm asking that question is very often, as a photographer, you're telling someone else's story, maybe through your perspective, right? But if you're a painter or a sculptor, you're always kind of more or less telling your own story.
I don't know if I agree with that.
No, I don't. To be honest,
Come blow me out of the water. Come on, I want to hear this.
I don't think I agree with that either. And
Okay.
again, you know, there's a separation in terms of if you're delivering photography for a client's need in a commercial sense, and then yeah, of course, it's not your story. In many cases, you're making an aspirational image for a commercial market. Then yeah, it's not. The photographer will still have his style. He'll still have his reference point and his, you know, if he brings an edge to the work, or you know, then fine. That's how people get reputations within the industry in terms of their visual styling. That's why they'll get recruited. That's how they'll pick up an agent. But I think it's definitely wrong in any respect to say that the photography is not inherently the voice of the artist. You know, I did some portraits of friends of mine that stay not far from here, and a painter, Brian Gorman, fantastic painter, who stays just down the road. And I found that, you know, I've been taking pictures for 30 years, and I took a photograph of Brian maybe 9 months ago. There was a lot of kind of turmoil in my family life, lots of pressures on the family and emotional pressures. And I found that I was overwhelmed when I printed the image, and I kind of couldn't initially grasp why I held it up as a kind of revelation, having taken portraits for years and celebrity portraiture and such like. And I've came to the thinking that I now, having reflected back at that period in my family life, the portrait is me. I'm presented with myself, and you know, there is a direct, put another way, there is direction within the portrait, and then within the time that I photographed Brian's portrait, I didn't so much direct him or conduct him specifically, but I molded that portrait, and I guess I took I carried emotional kind of baggage with me that set the scene and the tone and the ambience and the mood, which allowed the particular image to happen. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I look at it and I look at it almost as a slightly somber, slightly sad, emotional portrait of myself, because I have the context of what was going on in my life in the time. Mm-hmm. So I think that blows your argument out of the water, Rahul. I'm only giving one example, but the thing I suppose that I would tag on to the end of that kind of analogy, it's a really, really powerful sort of connection that you have when that happens. and that doesn't happen a lot. And I guess for many people, it takes time and experience and photographic or visual understanding to be able to engage with that that emotional connection.
Definitely.
And it's marvelous when it happens, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what's interesting is that I mean, maybe your question kind of also relates to the technical aspect of what of this medium, of what photography is, you know, as a painter, as a illustrator, drawer, and so forth. Obviously the connection is it's a very direct kind of form of expression. Yeah, it's your hand with a little tool doing something. Sculpture is the same way. It's you know,
it's a blank canvas. You start with a blank canvas.
Yeah.
You know,
but also I think, you know, the energy that gets channeled through your arm onto that canvas, it's a very direct form. We've all as kids drawn, you know, colored within or without the lines or outside of the lines and so forth. So we all understand that it's kind of a signature. It's easier to see a signature within work like sculpture, like painting, like drawing, for example. Photography is mediated obviously through a lot of technical aspects, so it's much more difficult in a way to create your own signature. I think it's you know, it's, as you said, I mean, you need to or either go to college and, you know, to Aberdeen, or do this for a very long time and somehow fashion out a signature style, if you will. But in the end, it's still the same as looking outside at the world. It's still your eyes in a certain sense. Yeah. I mean, if I look at, if you look outside of your head through your eyes, that's how we perceive the world. That's basically, that's photography. It's still you looking out.
Yeah. I mean, what drove the question was really the sequencing. So with a painting, you create it, and then you exhibit it, and then you kind of get paid for it. Whereas if you're doing a fashion shoot, for example, you'll get a brief, right? And of course, you breathe life into that brief, but someone is telling you what to do, and that, you know, you're more or less going to get paid for it. Then you deliver what you've been kind of asked to do within, you know, with your own style. So it's,
I guess the question relates, though, in many respects, it relates to the difference between fashion if you take the fashion example you've given, it's fashion advertising versus editorial fashion for magazine, where you've got maybe, you know, more freedom, ultimate creative control. You know, if you could kind of hit your argument out of the park if you were to interview Tim Walker or David Sims or, you know, Glenn Luchford. You know, in some sense, are you trying to work an argument that you're diminishing the fine art potential within someone working in that industry? Well, you know, in fashion, it's changed over the years. You know, we had 100 years of Vogue magazine at the National Portrait Gallery. We've had Tim Walker at Somerset House. We've had, you know, it's celebrated, and the fine art values of that medium are celebrated now, where, you know, 50 years ago they weren't so much. You know, right. Documentary photography was seen as being a medium that was more truthful and would talk about kind of social and cultural issues in society and seem much more serious.
Yeah.
But we celebrate the creative arts now, and thankfully that's a fantastic thing. You know, being at some of these great shows and seeing the creative energy that these artists take to particular mediums, whether it's fashion or, you know, or high-end advertising.
Yeah.
You know, the work's sublime, and you know, we celebrate that creativity. It's not diminished by anymore in respect of what discipline they're working in.
Yeah, it wasn't so much that it was diminished. I was wondering whether there was a different process or I don't know, a different mindset that you have to shift gears if you're going from one to the other, or are you using the same machine but just kind of going through a different.
Well, certainly from a teaching aspect, two of the things that I guess students don't realize as much that they're learning as they develop. And two of the strongest things they need to develop is the strength of communication and the creative problem solving.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you walk into any environment, whether it's a portrait of a celebrity or not, you still have to look around that location. You have to make choices. You have to try and use any kind of verbal communicative tools to make that person relaxed or make them angry, or
Exactly.
you know, so it's creative. You know, like I said earlier, photography is a democratic kind of medium, is becoming easier and easier. So if you have strength in communication and you can creatively problem solve, then you can flourish as an artist. You know, you can have infinite possibilities and choices within a location where someone not as skilled within that creative problem solving sees potentially one background. You know, I'll have to work here. That's where the light is. Someone with strength in creative problem solving can look around at that same room and go, this is fantastic. This is a playground. It's a visual, creative playground that I can have fun in and produce a wealth of solutions to that one creative problem with the same brief. So
well put. Yeah, absolutely. A brief is also, of course, just a set of limitations in a certain sense, right? And you have to do this, you have to do that, and so forth. All artwork, in a sense, is somehow, I like what you said about, you know, creative problem solving. It is very much about that. And, you know, we always have limitations somehow, you know, even a blank canvas is, you know, in a way, there are limitations there.
I think an interesting thing, and I may be going slightly off topic, an interesting thing photographically, when, you know, if I look at my enthusiasm towards taking pictures and the medium and creative problem solving, due to the fact that I get paid a salary to teach, I don't need to be so focused in terms of my photographic discipline. I can go out and I can enjoy things.
Right.
But there's still a part of me that has ambition. There's still a part of me that wants my images to be seen. There's still a part of me that wants people to recognize strength within the work. So, and you want the peers you want to be respected by other practitioners and galleries and an art kind of market. But one of the problems, the fact that I get paid a salary to do what I do, is that creativity lends itself to me. You know, one day I'll be doing portraiture, and the next day I'll be doing still life, and the next day I'll be experimenting with film, and the next day I'll want to do a 3D model of something. The next day and it's very hard to kind of focus down in one area and attack, say, the art market and attract the audience that fundamentally you would like, because you find that your work isn't distilled. Your kind of headspace is, you know, I love making things. Now, whether it's cooking or baking with my daughter, or whether it's kind of rearranging the garden, or whether it's trying to fix an old wall outside, it's all the creative process. I just, you know, it's making things. So you know, that's kind of hard. And I suppose I need as an educator, I need to nurture careers that are not at that point paid a salary for what they do. I suppose that's maybe what I'm getting around to. I have to not think about my position and the comfort from getting a check every month. And I have to try and encourage people to distill their practice possibly into sort of singular areas so that they can approach galleries and the gallery will understand who they are and what voice they have.
Right.
Does that make sense? And stop them from kind of tearing things up and trying this, trying that. There's, you know.
Absolutely. I think that makes a lot of sense. And I can imagine that's it can be probably kind of difficult to because you have to transport from a position of, well, let's put relative comfort, right? I mean, you've an established career. You've had several careers from what you've told me. That's kind of still going on in a certain sense, but on the other hand, you've been teaching for 14 years. So you have to kind of probably step out of a position of comfort, of ease in a certain sense, and engage with youngsters. I don't know if they're all that young, but let's say youngsters that that don't have that position whatsoever, and the world, also the photography world, the art world has become more complex since, I imagine, since you entered it. Definitely since I also entered it. I mean, it's become more and more complicated, more and more layered, and you need to kind of give them the tools and put yourself in a space where you can actually, focus on them, basically, right, and give them the tools to carve out, literally to carve out a niche, and hopefully, for some of them, they can carve out, a big piece of the pie, but it's still carving out a niche. And there's nothing as sad, I think, as I've come across people that had done an art study or a photography study, and have come upon a point where they decided it's not going to work. And, careers can work in myriad ways. I mean, there's thousands, millions of ways that what you studied, you can incorporate into a new journey, a new way. But I have come across people that have, come away very disappointed. I've seen their work, and it's not bad. It's good, and it just didn't work out for them. So